You are bleeding out, not from a physical wound, but from a quiet, agonizing psychological suicide you commit daily. You think fighting back makes you powerful? It makes you a hostage. Here is the terrifying truth about the invisible grenade destroying your life, and the ultimate secret to disarming it. It is exactly 2 a.m., and you are bleeding out. There is no physical wound, yet your most precious life force is steadily draining away onto the cold, glowing blue screen illuminating your exhausted face in a pitch-black room. Your heart hammers against your ribs like a panicked bird trapped in a cage. Your trembling thumbs fly across the digital keyboard, meticulously engineering a devastating paragraph to utterly annihilate a stranger's logic in a comment section, or perhaps crafting a venomous, passive-aggressive masterpiece for a toxic colleague. You hit send. For one microscopic, intoxicating fraction of a second, you feel like an absolute conqueror. You feel validated, powerful, and undeniably right. But then the sun rises, and the brutal reality sets in. You awaken with a crushing weight on your chest, your eyes burning, hollowed out by a lingering, nameless dread. You instinctively reach for your phone, bracing for the inevitable counterattack, only to realize your midnight victory was a pathetic illusion. You are not a conqueror. You are a captive. Have you ever truly stopped to look at this bizarre, destructive ritual? Have you ever asked yourself why you are voluntarily handing over the remote control of your nervous system to anonymous trolls and miserable co-workers, allowing them to bleed your spirit dry? At BrainBoost US, 05 warmly welcomes you to a space of profound realization and inner transformation. If you find yourself trapped in this exhausting cycle of daily outrage, please take a brief moment to subscribe to our channel. Your support is the vital energy that motivates us to continue uncovering these deep, life-altering perspectives for you. Welcome to the raw confession of a former reaction addict. For years, I was the tragic protagonist in a chaotic, suffocating narrative entirely of my own making. I walked through the world completely, hypersensitized to the gaze of others. My ego was a microscopic tripwire, and absolutely anyone, a dismissive barista, a faceless internet phantom, a condescending boss, could step on it and detonate my entire day. I existed in a perpetual state of exhausting defense, a creature with its quills permanently raised, ready to wage absolute war over the most insignificant perceived slights. My inner sanctuary was entirely dictated by external chaos. I was merely a puppet, blindly dancing to the agonizing strings of manufactured daily drama. It is a terrifyingly accurate portrait of the modern human condition. We are surviving in a ruthless era that brilliantly monetizes our outrage and financially rewards our most visceral, toxic reactions. We have been deeply brainwashed to believe that if we do not retaliate, if we do not brutally defend our stance, if we do not claim the last word, we are inherently weak. But the truth is far more sinister. This relentless state of hypervigilance, this perpetual readiness to fight meaningless battles, is a slow, agonizing psychological suicide. So, consider this an intimate invitation. Let us sit together in the quiet and finally discuss how to stop torturing ourselves, how to unearth the ultimate psychological cheat code, and how to master the absolute, transformative power of the art of ignoring. To truly grasp the profound liberation of mastering this art of ignoring, you must first witness the devastating moment I realized I was clutching a live grenade of my own pulling. It happened on a painfully ordinary Tuesday, a day that should have faded into the obscure background of my life. I was sitting in my car, rain violently lashing against the windshield, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. I had just engaged in a 30-minute screaming match over the phone with a person I barely respected, fighting tooth and nail over an absolute triviality, a misunderstood tone in an email. When I finally hung up, victoriously claiming the final, jagged word, the adrenaline began to curdle in my veins. My jaw was locked, my stomach twisted in nauseating knots, and my vision actually blurred at the edges from the sheer, toxic spike of my own blood pressure. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a triumphant warrior, but instead, I saw a hollow, aging hostage. I was terrified by the stranger staring back at me. In that cramped, suffocating car, the horrific truth finally crashed over me like a tidal wave. My opponent was not the person on the other end of the line. My opponent was my own fragile, desperately insecure ego. I had sacrificed an entire day of joy, productivity, and mental stability just to prove a worthless point to someone who would not even remember the conversation by dinner. I realized that my emotional bank account was completely bankrupt, recklessly spent on petty disputes and imaginary battlegrounds. The sheer absurdity of it broke me. I slumped against the cold leather, weeping not from sadness, but from the exhausting realization that I was the warden of my own psychological prison. That rainy afternoon was the death of my reactionary self, the brutal but necessary collapse that finally forced me to surrender my weapons and seek a completely different way to exist in a world obsessed with noise. That suffocating collapse in my car was the absolute catalyst that forced me to radically redefine what true strength actually looks like in a society that champions endless retaliation. I began to view my attention not merely as a reflex, but as the most valuable, irreplaceable currency I possessed, a finite resource vastly more precious than money or time. For decades, I had been standing on street corners, throwing $100 bills of my emotional energy at absolutely anyone who threw a penny of insult my way. It was a terrible, bankrupting psychological investment. I had to fundamentally rewire my understanding of power. We are taught that silence implies defeat, that walking away from a provocation is an admission of weakness or guilt. But as I dove deeper into the mechanics of human behavior, I uncovered a stunningly different reality. The people who bait you, the critics who mock you, the internet phantoms who leave venom in your comments, they are not looking for a resolution. They are starving for your energy. They want to drag you into their personal hell because misery requires an audience to feel legitimate. By reacting, you are validating their existence and crowning them the master of your emotional state. True power, I discovered, is the chilling, unbothered stillness of a calm ocean in the face of a pathetic stone being thrown into it. The stone sinks, and the ocean remains completely unchanged. I started to conceptualize ignoring not as a passive surrender, but as an aggressive, highly intentional boundary. It is the ultimate act of self-preservation. When you actively choose not to engage, you are effectively starving the drama of its necessary oxygen. You are looking the chaos dead in the eye and silently declaring that your inner peace is vastly more important than proving their ignorance. It was a philosophical rebirth, a profound realization that I did not have to attend every single argument I was invited to, and that true invincibility comes not from winning the war, but from completely refusing to step onto the battlefield. Armed with this beautiful, empowering philosophy, I stepped back out into the chaotic world, only to brutally discover that rewiring decades of conditioned impulsivity feels exactly like trying to stop a speeding freight train with your bare hands. The theory of ignoring is poetic, but the actual practice of it is an agonizing, messy ordeal of psychological withdrawal. The first time I tried to actively ignore a blatant provocation, a snide, passive-aggressive remark from a notoriously toxic colleague during a morning meeting, my entire body went into absolute shock. My heart rate exploded, my mouth went dry, and a physical heat radiated up my neck. My brain screamed at me to speak up, to deploy the perfectly crafted, devastating comeback that was already sitting heavily on my tongue. The urge to react was a physical itch, a desperate, clawing addiction demanding to be fed. I forced my mouth shut. I forced my face to remain neutrally composed. The silence in the room stretched out for what felt like an eternity, and the internal friction was so intense I felt like my skin was vibrating. Walking out of that room, I did not feel powerful. I felt nauseous, defeated, and profoundly uncomfortable. My ego was throwing a violent temper tantrum, trying to convince me that everyone in that room now thought I was a coward. For the next 24 hours, my mind obsessively replayed the scenario, begging me to send a follow-up email just to reclaim my perceived lost dominance. This is the part of the journey no one warns you about. Depriving your ego of its daily fix of conflict hurts. It requires gripping the armrests of your life and white-knuckling your way through the burning desire to justify yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. But I held the line. I created a strict 24-hour buffer rule. I was not allowed to respond to anything that triggered an emotional spike until a full day had passed. And invariably, By the time the clock ran out, the desperate urgency to fight back had evaporated, replaced by a strange, quiet clarity. Yet, as those agonizing weeks of biting my tongue and sweating through the withdrawals slowly bled into months, the heavy, suffocating fog of constant hostility finally lifted, revealing a landscape of profound, unshakable peace. The transformation was not sudden, but rather a quiet, steady dawn breaking over a mind that had been trapped in the dark for years. I woke up one morning and realized that the hollow, nameless dread that used to sit on my chest was completely gone. I checked my phone, saw a wildly unreasonable message from an old acquaintance, and instead of my heart hammering against my ribs, I felt absolutely nothing. I felt a mild, passing sympathy for their chaotic state of mind, swiped the notification away, and calmly went back to brewing my coffee. It was a miracle. The invisible prison walls had entirely dissolved. I had taken back the remote control to my own nervous system. The world was still as loud, as offensive, and as deeply flawed as it had always been, but I was no longer a frantic participant in its madness. I had become the calm observer, sitting safely behind the impenetrable fortress of my own selective attention. My energy, once scattered to the wind and drained by strangers, was now compounding, fueling my own ambitions, my deep relationships, and my genuine joy. The realization hit me with breathtaking clarity. You cannot control what the world throws at you, but you possess absolute, dictatorial authority over what you choose to catch. If you are exhausted, if you are bleeding out on the digital battlefield of modern life, I am telling you from the other side that you have the power to just walk away. Let them be wrong. Let them think they won. Let them drown in their own desperate noise. Reclaim your spirit, protect your energy with a ruthless grace, and step into the absolute, terrifying freedom of never having to prove yourself to anyone ever again. This is your life. Do not let them spend it for you. In the end, the journey from being a hostage of your own ego to becoming the architect of your inner peace is the most transformative shift you can make in an incessantly noisy world. We spend so much of our lives conditioned to believe that every provocation requires a reaction, that defending our pride is synonymous with maintaining our strength. But as this journey reveals, true power lies in the exact opposite. It is found in the radical, deliberate choice to withhold your attention from the chaos that desperately seeks to consume it. By starving the drama and refusing to engage in petty, meaningless battles, you stop bankrupting your emotional currency. Yes, the withdrawal from constant conflict is painful. Your ego will scream, begging you to fight back, to deliver the perfect comeback, and to prove your worth to people who do not truly matter. However, if you can endure that initial discomfort and hold the line, you will step into an unshakable fortress of calm. You will realize that you possess the ultimate authority over your own nervous system. You no longer have to bleed out on the digital and physical battlegrounds of other people's misery. Letting others be wrong, letting them believe they have won, is not a surrender. It is the ultimate victory of self-preservation. You reclaim your time, your energy, and your life. Ultimately, the profound freedom of mastering the art of ignoring is the absolute realization that your peace is infinitely more valuable than their validation. Your attention is not a cheap reflex. It is your most precious, finite currency. True invincibility is never about winning every war you are invited to. It is the quiet, terrifying power of refusing to step onto the battlefield in the first place. You do not need the last word to be victorious. Start implementing the 24-hour buffer rule immediately. Whenever you face a toxic email, a rude remark, or an online provocation that makes your blood boil, do absolutely nothing. Do not type a reply. Do not snap back. Force a hard, 24-hour pause. Use this time to remind yourself that engaging only feeds their need for drama while draining your energy. Once the 24 hours pass, the chemical spike of anger will have evaporated, leaving you with the quiet clarity to simply delete the message, smile, and move on with your day completely unbothered. What is one specific thing, a petty argument, a toxic person's opinion, or an unnecessary stressor, that you are going to choose to completely ignore starting today? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below so we can all learn and draw inspiration from each other's perspectives. If you found value in this message, please subscribe to the channel to support our work. Your support gives us the motivation to keep creating deep, meaningful content just like this. Thank you.